Alright, before we get into the weeds of how this thing actually works, we need to clear up the biggest misconception right out of the gate. When you see the sales page for the Water Freedom System, with all those pictures of shiny water tanks and backyard setups, it's really easy to think you're ordering a physical machine. You're not. A truck isn't going to pull up to your driveway with a pre-built generator. What you are actually buying is a digital blueprint. It's a comprehensive, step-by-step instructional guide. Once you check out, you get access to a members area that breaks the whole process down into 3 core modules. Module 1 is the actual DIY build for the atmospheric water generator. Module 2 is all about water purification, making sure what you just collected is actually safe to drink. And Module 3 covers long-term storage so your water doesn't go bad. They also throw in a few bonus checklists and guides. Honestly, the bonuses are just nice-to-haves, but those first 3 modules are the meat and potatoes of the whole program. So, what are you actually building here? How does a bunch of PVC pipes and hardware store parts pull drinking water out of thin air? I want to break down the actual science, because when you understand how it works, you'll realize this isn't snake oil. The system relies on the principles of atmospheric water generation, or AWG for short. Don't let the technical terms scare you, the physics are actually incredibly simple. It's based on something called the Magnus-Stettins formula. Basically, this is the math that dictates the dew point. You know when you pull a cold glass of ice water out of the fridge on a hot day, and the outside of the glass gets all wet? That's condensation. The glass cooled the humid air right next to it below its dew point, forcing the water vapor to turn into liquid. The Water Freedom System uses a simple, solar-powered thermal exchange to cool a specific surface area, forcing the moisture in your backyard air to condense and drip down into a collection tank. But generating the water is only half the battle. The second module focuses on purification, and this is where it gets really clever. Instead of telling you to buy expensive UV lights or chemical drops, the guide teaches you how to build a slow sand biofilter. According to EPA guidelines on low-tech water treatment, a properly maintained slow sand filter develops a biological layer on the top called a Schmutzdeck. It sounds gross, but it's actually a layer of beneficial microbes that literally eat the bad pathogens in the water. The guide gives you the exact measurements for layering gravel, specific types of sand, and activated charcoal to create this biological filter. It's brilliant because it uses basic biology and thermodynamics instead of relying on expensive, grid-dependent technology. Now that we know the science actually checks out, let's talk about what this system gets right. And honestly, there's a lot to like here. First and foremost is the accessibility. If you were to go out and buy a commercial, plug-in atmospheric water generator, you're looking at anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000. This guide teaches you how to build a highly functional, passive equivalent using basic hardware store parts for under $150. The ROI there is massive. Secondly, the instructions are genuinely beginner-friendly. You don't need to know how to weld metal, and you don't need to be able to read complex electrical schematics. The guide is written almost like a Lego instruction manual. If you can use a drill and follow basic step-by-step pictures, you can build this. And just imagine the peace of mind you get knowing that if the municipal grid goes down, or a freeze knocks out the local water supply, you have a passive, solar-driven system quietly pulling gallons of water from the humidity in your yard. That kind of self-reliance is priceless. But look, I promised you the unfiltered truth, and this is where I have to pump the brakes a little bit. Here is the catch, and it's the exact reason I told you not to buy this until you heard me out. The sales page makes this sound like a quick, easy weekend project. It's not. Sourcing the specific materials, cutting the PVC to the exact measurements, and making sure all your seals are completely watertight will take you a solid 2 weekends if you're a beginner. It requires actual elbow grease. More importantly, this system is heavily dependent on your local climate. Because it relies on that dew point and condensation we talked about earlier, it needs moisture in the air to work. If you live in a super arid environment, like Phoenix, Las Vegas, or West Texas, where the humidity is consistently dropping below 30%, this system is going to yield very little water. It's designed for humid, coastal, or temperate climates. If you live in a desert, this specific build is going to frustrate you. Also, that biofilter we talked about. It requires maintenance. You can't just build it and forget about it for 5 years. You have to scrape and clean the top layer of sand every few months, or the water flow will choke and the filtration will stop working. It's a living system, and it requires you to be an active participant in your own water supply. So, how do you know if this is actually going to work for your specific situation? Let's make this super easy and just break it down into 2 quick lists. You should absolutely buy the Water Freedom System if you live in a humid or temperate climate, you have a backyard or a piece of land where you can set this up out of the elements, and you want a low-tech, off-grid backup plan that doesn't rely on the electrical grid or expensive replacement filters. But, you should skip it if you live in an apartment, you live in a highly arid desert climate with low humidity, you aren't willing to get your hands dirty with some basic DIY plumbing, or you're looking for a system that produces hundreds of gallons a day to replace your city water bill entirely. This is for supplemental, emergency, and off-grid water, not for high-volume daily consumption. Alright, let's talk numbers and wrap this up. The Water Freedom System usually sits right around the $40 mark. When you compare that to the $300 you'd spend on a basic commercial countertop water generator, or the thousands you'd spend on bottled water during a prolonged crisis, the value is undeniably there. My final verdict? I give it a solid 8 out of 10. It's not a magic wand, and it requires real DIY effort and the right climate to shine, but the science is sound, the instructions are incredibly clear, and the peace of mind it offers is easily worth the price of admission. If you fit the profile I just mentioned, it's a fantastic investment in your family's resilience. If you want to check it out for yourself, I've left a link to the official, secure checkout in the description below. If you have any questions about the build, the biofilter, or the climate requirements, drop them in the comments and I'll answer them personally. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more no BS survival and prep reviews. Stay safe, stay prepared.